we have droves of illegal immigrants coming into the United States. Harriman High has something like close to 30%.
Over 30% now.
Yeah. Of its
illegals?
Population.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
And it has completely transformed.
Harriman
How
High?
have I not heard about this?
30% of
It was-
Harriman High
yeah.
is illegals?
We
And
need
it
to
was
look into that.
it was actually in the news, and
Whoa.
it has completely transformed
Where are they
the
living?
culture of the school. And the teachers can't keep up with it because there's too many kids that can't speak English, and so they can't teach them all English, so they're putting them on headsets.
And welcome to We Are the People Radio. This is your host, Jason Preston. And been a while, brother.
It's been a minute.
Tom Hazelton, how you been? How you doing?
Glad to be back, man. Let's get this show going. It's going to be hot today.
It is. We're going to obviously want to make sure everyone's following us. I always say, follow us on Rumble or YouTube. We Are the People, UT. But what we're really asking people to do is go to our website, wearethepeople.org, and sign up for our newsletter. That way, if they take down one of our channels, we are pushing out every show through the newsletter so that we can make sure you get that. So that if they shut us down, we're not going to stop getting this information out to people. And if you want to support us, Patriot Punch, it's an awesome energy drink, or you can get a shirt, whatever. But we do appreciate your support, and we've had a lot of you guys supporting us, and we appreciate it because we cannot do this fight without you. That being said, the 2024 legislative session is about come to an end. And, Tom?
Well, let's just say that it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I thought we had some people up there at that place we call the People's House, and I don't know that we have many left.
No, it's not. And this is where I really want to talk to our listeners, and we've got to get the message out because so many people care about freedom. So many people are concerned with what's happening right now with Joe Biden, with the borders, and so many people care and they want to be involved, but they have no idea what's happening in their own backyard.
Well, they don't know how either. How do they become involved? What's the best step and the best route for them to be involved in?
Well, and to me, the answer is, look, the battle is being implemented in your backyard. Yes, there's stuff happening in D.C., but it's being implemented in your backyard. And you can have very little impact in D.C., but you can get in control of your backyard. And so today, what we're going to talk, there's been a huge issue the last few weeks with Natalie Cline, who's been censured by the school board. The actual legislator went after her. It's been absolutely ridiculous, and it has been an absolute honor for me to have her here today. Natalie Cline, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here.
Now, Natalie, I have... when I first started getting in the fight, when I first started running for office, I had certain people that I knew of that I really looked up to. And I remember the first time I spoke at a meeting, you were there, and Natalie spoke, and I was just honored to be able to share the stage because I just have that much respect for you. I've had for a long time. You have been leading this fight for a long time, fighting for our kids. So we're on, and honestly, it is to me a huge honor to have her. And again, if you don't know who she is, if you want to be involved in the fight for freedom, you need to be involved in your backyard, and she has been leading that fight, along with Monica Wilbur, who we also have here. Monica, how are you?
Good, Jason. Thanks.
We've had you on a few times. You're involved in a lot of things, not only with Natalie, but you've just been in the fight for, I guess, a long time yourself. And you guys have an organization, Higher Ground. Tell us about your organization.
Yes, and I was inspired to join the fight because of Natalie. So I just want to say that your admiration is shared by me as well. And our organization, Higher Ground, is meant to demonstrate how the school system is out of control in the same way that you could say like a car on a road can't stay in its lane. And we have a school system that's kind of just swerving and everybody's backing off and letting it do its own thing, but it's taking over the road essentially. And we have been, we researched nonstop to just demonstrate the things that are going on in the schools, to show what's happening behind the curtain. And lots of parents have been very appreciative. We've had people from across the nation reach out to us and say, great work. What do you think about this? We actually had a legislator from New Hampshire who reached out and wanted our opinion on the science of reading. These programs are proliferating nationwide. So it's not just Utah, it's everywhere. And it's because it's a global agenda. And they want to make sure that the agenda just kind of seeps down into every municipality, every locality, every kid.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges with Utah, and the reason they've been able to get away with so much here, is because everyone just thinks it's Utah. There's no problems here and everything's fine. There's no crime. There's all these problems. It's a great state to live. But you start to peel back the layers of the onion, and you find out that this state is honestly, and I think we'll put this up on the screen, but it's ranked by Best Life one of the most corrupt states in the country. I think they have it ranked at number 2.
Yeah, there's plenty of crime. It's just wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, the crime is organized political crime.
That's right.
They'll arrest you if you're going over 10 miles over the speed limit, but meanwhile they've got the most horrific stuff going on here. So I want to read this because this will set the stage for our conversation. Because so many people say, well, we have great Republicans in this state. It's a Republican state, and in the past we've talked about election integrity, and they said, well, we don't have Democrats getting in, so how could they be cheating? I have an organization who I look up to probably as far as organizations. There's a lot of great organizations out there that are doing a lot of great things. One that I look up to the most is probably Utah Freedom Coalition. And they are, if there's one organization that's involved that knows the bills, right, that really is in the weeds with what's going on at the Capitol, it's Utah Freedom Coalition. So Utah Freedom Coalition, who's really just like at the tip of the spear, and particularly a couple of gals who've been very influential in helping me understand the political, situation here in Utah. They put out a post yesterday, and I'm actually going to read it because I think people need to understand what's happening here in Utah. So this is the post. Here's what it said. So it says, all right, barring, because we've been in legislative season here for about a month, and now we're in the last week. I think it ends
today.
The
last day.
Today's the last day. And here's what they say. All right. Barring any shocking changes and turnabout, the legislature of Utah is not aligned with the people, but instead globalist foreign countries and technocrats. So we won't be engaging there anymore. It is a waste of our time. Utah does not have a representative government. It has a captured institution. So no more energy to, in quote, disagree better. Moving forward, we'll keep updates on relevant info the public needs to know and research you will need. We'll also try to post more parallel system stuff and prep. You're going to need it, sadly. What do you guys think of that?
It's kind of where we're at. We're in a really tough spot. I've seen the work that they do, and their research is impeccable. These gals from Utah Freedom Coalition, they dig and dig and dig, and they find it all, and they highlight it, and they put it out there, and they have done so much work trying to get the information to the legislators and to educate them so that they can be smart when they vote on these bills. But when you work like crazy and you get them the information and they still vote wrong, I can see why they're like, yeah, no one's listening. No one's listening up there. Why are we wasting our time?
And what's interesting is Natalie and I have been active up at the legislature as well. We've seen a lot of the bills that come through. We see a lot of the pitfalls that are potential with the language and the loopholes that are there to be exploited. When we mention them, again, it falls a lot of times on deaf ears. And if it is, if the recommendations are taken, they're taken kind of reluctantly, only because they've been put in a position where they have no other choice. But it's like pulling teeth a lot of times. And you would like to think that if we're speaking logically, if we have evidence to demonstrate what we are saying, that, these things would be no-brainers, but I feel like we live in a post-rational world at this point.
Well, I've got a thought on that.
Yeah.
Seeing this is is a little disheartening, but it's also a wake-up call. You know, you've got these people and these different organizations, coalitions that have been out there researching and pushing, helping us understand what's in these bills, what these legislators are really doing, because to us in the state of Utah, again, they look like they're perfect. Okay, they dress right, they talk right, they act right, and that yet in pub or in private, they're not doing the things that are actually in our best interest. And we know that, and that's what's funny, yet we still allow it as Utahns. And really, I'd say this goes out, a shout out to the rest of the country. Pay attention to what your legislators are really doing. But with them giving up, it's not, I wouldn't say they're giving up, but they're saying, look, the legislator is captured, okay? It is captured in the fact that we have tried to get these guys to do what we need to do. That means it's up to us people, okay? We need to be tired enough and awake enough of this and actually just start actually pushing back. Because when this becomes popular, when it becomes mainstream, when people actually wake up and say, look, I've had enough, when we have amazing people like Natalie over here on school boards, or when we have somebody else that's running, you know, media, whatever it may be, it needs to become mainstream. We were talking about that before this podcast started. And if that doesn't happen, you guys, you're going to awaken to your awful situation quicker than you think, and it's going to affect our children. And that really, really worries me.
Yeah, I appreciate all that feedback. And the fact of the matter, this is why we try so hard to do this podcast and try so hard on social media to get people to start focusing on our backyard. Because, look, right now we are outmanned, outgunned, and out-strategized. I mean, we are getting our butts handed to us. And the establishment is running away with this state. And so one of the things I want to do today is, and to our listeners, I mean, God bless you guys, because you guys are the small percentage that are paying attention, that know what's going on. And so our mission is to get that out to more people, because I really believe, I know if we can wake up enough people, if we can build an army of people who know what's going on and start standing up, it is the only hope, is to get enough people to start standing up and get an army to push back and get these guys under control. Now, one of the things I want to address is this, because I know as soon as legislative session is over, you're going to see our reps start to do what they did last year, start to praise how great they are and all the great legislation they passed, and all the people, and the mainstream media is going to talk about all the great bills that got passed, and it was the most conservative year ever. And then those of us who are in the know roll our eyes, but the average person out there is like, oh, wow, they are doing such a great job. Utah's crushing it. What I want to do, I'd like you guys, Natalie and Monica, to give an example of a bill, just so people can get an idea of how the Utah way. And so if you wouldn't mind, give us an example of a bill that went through legislative session that sounds on the outside like it was an excellent victory, but when you look at what's actually in the bill, was absolutely a disaster for the conservative movement.
Sure. So first one that comes to my mind is the bathroom bill. There were a couple different versions that were brought forward. Phil Lyman had one that was actually really good. It just made it so boys can't be in girls' bathrooms, period, and vice versa. There was another bill, the one that actually made its way through and got passed, HB 257, which was Representative Kara Birkeland's bill, that people thought that that's what it did. That's how it was pitched to the people, that that boys and men can't go in girls' bathrooms or private spaces, locker rooms, bathrooms, etc., except at least in government buildings. Okay, this affected government buildings, and so that includes schools. Okay, the problem is, I saw Matt Walsh do an episode praising Utah for this, and he's usually spot on when it comes to the issues with kids, right? And these dangers.
It sounds amazing,
right?
So that's exactly what should be done.
That's national attention, right, on Utah. Like, woohoo, we're the conservative state. But if you actually read the language of the bill, it has all kinds of caveats written into it. So, in fact, before this bill was passed, there wasn't anything on the book saying that boys or men couldn't be in girls' private spaces, but it also, so it wasn't prohibited, but it also wasn't legal. This bill, for the first time ever in our state's history, legalized men and boys being in women's private spaces if they met certain criteria. So which only confuses the issue, because how many women or girls in one of those kind of spaces, a locker room, a bathroom, etc., are going to see somebody that to them looks like a man, maybe dressed as a woman, and think, wait, we passed a law that's not legal, and so they're going to go and report it and say there's a man in the bathroom. And guess what happens at that point? They have to check with the man, right? And if he meets those criteria and he can legally be in there, then the fault is on the person who made a false report.
Wow.
And if you make a false report more than once, you are slapped with a Class B misdemeanor.
You're kidding.
So
Welcome to Utah.
Your average person has no idea what they're up against until they make the mistake.
It's like using the wrong pronoun.
Right?
How do you know?
Right? You don't know until you make the mistake. And then
So there's certain, what are the categories? What are the certain qualifications?
the criteria.
The criteria.
Monica.
Yeah.
Monica?
Well, it's very interesting. So in government bathrooms, you can be a male in a female restroom as long as you're not committing a crime. But you have free reign in there otherwise. And that's awkward. That's awkward. I mean, that's putting it lightly. If I'm a mom and I send my young daughter into a government restroom, I do not want her in there with a grown man.
Absolutely.
Under any conditions. But it's okay if he's not committing a crime of lewdness or voyeurism. And again, how do you even prosecute something like that when we're talking children potentially being involved?
This actually has to be written into the bill. And I'm going to go on record by saying, if you're a man and you go into a woman's restroom with my wife or my daughter, there's going to be a problem. I don't care who you are. And this stuff needs to end right here. I can't believe what I'm hearing, because I thought this bathroom bill was good too. This is infuriating me.
Right. Well, now you can be in the bathroom with your daughter and your wife, I guess, to protect them in that situation. It is very odd. Another problem with the bill is that it makes some distinctions between like restrooms and then changing facilities or changing rooms. And a man can go into a woman's changing room. He can't be in a complete state of undress, but as long as, his privates, his junk is covered, he can be in there. If he meets two criteria. The first one is he has to have an amended birth certificate. The second criterion is that he has to have undergone a medical procedure or surgical procedure toward an attempted sex change. So, and then there's a list of what could qualify underneath that. One of the things is an orchiectomy, which is the removal of one or more testes. And so a man could be missing a single testy and still be allowed in the women's changing room in a state of partial undress.
So I appreciate you bringing the clarity, because here's why this is such a Trojan horse. Because if a mother reports or a husband reports that, hey, this man was in the bathroom with my daughter, and it turns out that this guy had one of his nuts chopped off, but everything else is still intact. Yes. Guess what? If she does that twice, she gets a misdemeanor. She gets charged.
Yes.
Not him.
You know that they're going to do that on purpose.
But right. So so what does that do for the woman? I don't know if he's got all his junk or not. So I better not say anything.
Right. It's a chilling effect. They will not say, nobody will report anything. So they might as well have just written the bill as men can use women's spaces now.
But meanwhile, they're going to come parade on the news what a great conservative bill this was. This is an example of the Utah way. I mean, I'm a huge concern. I have a huge concern with our elections. Right, that's our election integrity has been a massive issue since 2020. Almost every red state has put incredible laws in to tighten up their elections since then. Utah has done nothing. They finally passed one law this last year, and what does it do? It sounds like, oh yeah, we fixed it. And what does it? Does nothing. It completely protects them and keeps the system in place. So I have a real problem when the news gets up there, when you'll see it come pretty soon about the most conservative session and all these great bills. But when you actually look what's in those bills, while on the top it says it's incredible and you get in the weeds, this is the type of stuff. we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Do you remember the Marine or, I don't know, Special Forces guy on the New York City subway
Oh, yeah.
who ended up standing up for the other young lady there and fighting off the other person, and he's the one that went to jail?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Who wants to stand up for anybody if you're going to be the one going to jail? Who wants to be the one reporting somebody in a woman's bathroom that's a man? How do they know what they have, what they don't have? And they're going to be the one that's affected.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is anarchy.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that just really, again, just frustrates me to no end is you have good people in there in the system who are trying to do the right thing. And there is nobody in the system who has been exposing the corruption behind the mirror or behind the curtains more than Natalie Cline. And what have they done to Natalie? Not just the school board, but what business does the state, our legislator, have, and the governor and the lieutenant governor have going after you?
Well, I could speak to when I first got on the board in 2021 is when I started on the board. Immediately, as I kept posting things about the BLM movement at the time and the LGBT things that were coming into the schools, I got, the online mobs came at me like right out of the gate, right? And just destroyed my campaign Facebook page. You can go there today. It's still smoldering. In fact, this latest thing has brought more trolls to there, and you can just see how vile these people are. And yet they come after me for bullying, which is kind of ironic. But right out of the gate, that happened, and then the governor was on the news about it, saying this is why we need to go back to a governor-appointed school board we can avoid this kind of extremism on the board, as if I was the extremist because I was warning people about the Black Lives Matter curriculum that states across the nation were bringing in, and warning people here in Utah to watch out for that. And sometimes that's associated with Black History Month, not always. But, they immediately vilified me as if I hate Black people, which has never been the truth. I have no problem with other people, but, this is how they have created. This is the caricature of me that they've created so that the governor can make his case to go back to a governor-appointed state board instead of a partisan, a partisan board, which when I was elected, that was the first year it became a partisan board instead of a nonpartisan board. And so, he's now making those claims again, doing press conferences the last couple of weeks saying, we need to go back to a governor-appointed board, and saying he appoints the Board of Higher Ed, and he appoints all these other things, and nobody knows who their school board members are anyway, but everybody knows who the governor is. And so if the governor picks bad people on the board, which if they don't know who they are, then why would they know the board is bad? But he's saying if the board is bad and I appointed him, then people can throw me out of office. But again, he's wanting to centralize all the power under himself.
What's interesting is he's also talking about appointing the Attorney General.
Yes.
Everywhere it's like people, and again, people.
King Cox.
This is the pattern of behavior. They keep saying
King him.
They keep saying that I have a pattern of behavior, but really, you got to look at what the system itself is doing. I just keep consistently exposing it. They're consistently exposing their pattern of behavior. Their corruption is what I'm exposing, and that's where we have a pattern that is very disconcerting.
For the people that know you and at least understand, like have just some North Star, they know what you're doing. They know you're doing the right thing. They know you're keeping it consistent. But what it does, it makes it mainstream for them to now make their case to come out against you and use you as the whipping boy. Right.
They've come almost every 6 months since I got on the board. They do another attempt to take me down, and they every time they have all of these news stories that are filled with lies.
Your speech is not free.
No, it's not. I have had to pay a price for it. And the fact that I put that on as my disclaimer on all my posts, constitutionally protected speech, I think they hate it with a passion, and they come at me even harder, even with that reminder. But every 6 months when they come at me, they're creating a bigger rap sheet of media that they can now cite. Now that I'm running again, they can just keep regurgitating all of the past lies to try to convince my voters that not to trust me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a reminder, and this is why, to me, and I hope our viewers will share this with their friends, because there's so many people out there. We have a huge army in Utah of good conservative people that are ticked about the border, that see our country is falling apart, but they have no idea what's happening in their own backyard. And so, we've talked a little bit about some of the corruption in the legislative body in this state. Some people want to say, well, the school boards here has got to be good. I mean, we've got all these, church-going mothers that are probably sitting on that school board, and they're concerned about the kids. Why should people be concerned about the school board? What's going on for those who maybe do not know?
Well, let's first talk about education in general in Utah really quickly. And I think public education has become quite a bit of a sacred cow. I would say it's almost Utah's primary religion. And I know a lot of people think the Latter-day Saint faith is, but if you just mess around and find out, criticize something that's going on in the public education system, and watch the backlash that ensues. And we've seen that happen with Natalie. I've been speaking out up at the state board for the past 2.5 years. I go to all the meetings and I give public comment. My comments are very pointed. They are well researched. I even had the Attorney General assigned to the state board at one meeting pull me aside and say, where are you saying that this thing is happening in this document that we produced? And then he tried to basically kind of, brush off my criticism as, well, that'll get litigated through the courts. It'll take 3 years. Who cares until then? We have, I think, a climate and a culture up at the state board that is that views itself as being above the law. Now, I'm not going to say that's everybody up at the state board. I'm sure, and there are two parts to the state board. First, there's the elected members of the state board, the 15 elected members that are elected by the public, and now these are partisan elections. We have 13 Republicans on the State Board of Education. You would not know it by what they vote on.
I mean, they're not in line with the Republican platform? They
vote almost consistently in line with the two radical Democrats on the state board. I would say upwards of 97, 98% of the time. And I can say that because I've been watching the meetings and I watch the pattern of voting that goes on there. And then you have the State Office of Education, which also falls under the name Utah State Board of Education. And the State Office of Education is 400 employees strong, $27 million payroll for the State Office of Education. And that's the administrative state.
How much money?
Over $27 million
per year.
For 400 employees?
Yes, for 400 employees.
And that's our tax dollars.
That's your tax dollars, right.
Oh, and a lot of that goes to like the superintendency.
How much does the superintendent make?
Well over $250,000.
$250,000.
She's better paid than the governor is.
$27 million for 400 employees?
Yes, approximately 400 employees.
That's over $600,000 per employee.
Yeah.
If those numbers are correct.
Those numbers are correct.
Please tell me you're wrong.
No, they're not wrong. It's kind of shocking when you look at it.
How do I sign up over there?
Well, you have to, carry your card of loyalty to the state and all things global. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, to our listeners, did you know that you're paying that?
That's shocking.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And that, and so you have a lot of policy that gets implemented that circumvents even our very leftist board. And they just do it through the administrative functions of the state. They'll write an administrative rule, for instance, and, it's almost a foregone conclusion that all these amendments will go through. Natalie has... she's drawn a lot of attention in these past few years because everything that goes through her committee, she reads, She makes amendments to, she kind of points out like how these policies are not good. But all the work she does usually gets undone in the full board. So even if she gets something passed in committee, which is like pulling teeth, but even if she gets something passed in committee, usually when it comes to the full board, they've already decided, yeah, if it comes from Natalie, we won't even look at it, even though it could be one of the most rational things on the earth. Like, how about we curtail the use of AI in educating our children? Or how about we add some mechanics and conventions into the English language arts standards? You know, things like punctuation, things like literary techniques and elements, and they'll vote it down. And so it's really a horrible, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. And it's a horrible way to govern. But when you realize that all these policies filter down to our kids, and they are shouldered by our children, and these are not good policies.
So how concerned should the parents be about what's going on in the schools? Because I talk to parents all the time, and they're like, you know what, I hear what's going on out nationally, but I don't think that stuff's happening in Utah.
Oh, it's absolutely happening in Utah. In fact, we in many respects are leading the charge. We like to be at the forefront. We're out there. I mean, Portrait of a Graduate and our strategic plan, personalized competency-based learning. A lot of these programs that have been implemented we have staff that are going around the country training other states on how to do this.
What is Portrait of a Graduate?
So Portrait of a Graduate is the state level social emotional learning program. It's competency-based education, which the competencies are not academic in nature. They do give lip service to academic mastery, but everything else is the subjective soft skills. They call them workplace skills that all employers, this is what they're looking for now, whether it's, I'm trying to think.
It's like an HR thing.
Yeah. It's things that are hard to quantify and measure. And they actually say that in the document that these things are not necessarily, that's the key word, meant to be quantified and measured, because how do you quantify how resilient somebody is or how honest they are? Like they are all wonderful sounding words that every parent would go, yes, I want my child to be that. You know, it's supposed to be what every child should achieve or become by the time they graduate. So it's the state's cookie cutter plan for graduates. That's why they call it Portrait of a Graduate. But the problem is that they are quantifying and measuring. And when I brought that up, they say, no, we're not doing that. It says right on here, it's not necessarily meant to be quantified or measured, but they're quantifying and measuring it through the personalized competency-based learning program, which is the PCBL. So the Portrait of a Graduate is the framework, so they can literally say, oh, no, that doesn't measure anything, because that's the framework, and then PCBL is what they use to quantify and measure. And so they have all of this data that they're collecting. Everything is hyper datafied, so they're trying to figure out this brings in bias, right? Because how, Tom, do you decide how empathetic I am? Right? You get to judge me and score me on my level of empathy or lack thereof.
That's being graded and measured in the schools.
Yes.
Well, that's
social.
That's the family's job of being able to do these things, and they're taking that out of the family, out of the mothers and fathers' role of teaching their children empathy, apathy, sympathy, whatever it may be, right, into social emotional learning. And I just wanted to add one clarification so I don't get a lot of backlash on this. 67,000, not 670. I missed a zero.
67,000.
I apologize.
Jeez, Tom.
I apologize. So sorry.
It's all good.
I've been waiting for a moment. Sorry. Please continue.
All right. I'm not a math major, so
break down social emotional learning briefly.
But before we go there, just back to what you were saying. This is hugely problematic when the state is assigned to judge your heart and your mind, not your academic work. It's they have a very different definition of success than a parent has for their child, right? And people, they say, this is about helping children learn to lead and succeed. Well, you have to ask every time they say these nice sounding words, what do you mean by that? Define what success, how the state defines success, because most parents would not agree with the state's definition, which is workforce pipeline type definition, where your child is only as good as they are helpful to increasing the state's the GDP, right? It's all purely economic and workforce, labor force driven definitions
Sounds
of
communistic
success.
to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. We have, and that's a whole nother thing we could talk about, is the workforce pipelines that start in preschool. That our education system is deeply partnered and contracts with the Department of Workforce Services starting in preschool.
On that point, I just want to bring this up. I mean, the education system has been closely following a system set up by the Rockefellers in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where they were factory workers, and all it was to take our children, children's children, etc., and continue to put them in factories. They don't teach kids how to be an entrepreneur. They don't teach kids barely how to balance a checkbook. They don't even know what that is today. How to run money, how to do taxes, anything that's actually relevant in this world. They just want them to sit down, shut up, listen. How good can you be? So if you're getting a 4.0, that child listens very, very well. They're following the system. Most of these kids don't understand that when they leave high school, they're going to be working for that C student that just said, hey, I'm here to get what I can. I'm going to figure out this social system, and I'm going to go crush it in the real world. Okay? Now, there's others that you have to go in for academia, for, an attorney, for a doctor, for those things that you have to do those to get these particular things. And you can't just, you have to learn mathematics and whatever. That's great. But the majority of the way that this school system is set up, even and especially in the state of Utah, is just to push out another factory worker into the world, and they're just laymen. That's all they
I
are.
think I go a step further than that. I mean, if you want to understand the problem with the school system, at least one problem is look at when we had COVID. When the authorities said wear a mask, even though all the science, previous science said that this piece of cloth, that COVID would go right through it. Look at the obedience. Look at the obedience factor. When they said you need to close down your business, look at
That's what it's about.
everyone says, how did we become such a society of sheep?
Schools.
The public school system has done that.
Absolutely.
Not my kids.
Let's talk about SEL because I think
yeah.
social emotional learning, to me, that's right in line with what the United Nations, World Economic Forum is pushing with the social credit score, where we're pushing people to be good, whether it's climate change, whether it's, talk about social emotional learning.
The PCBL, the personalized competency-based
Yes.
learning, that's measuring, that's all tech-driven education, because it's the tech that gathers the data that then they can say, are they achieving these portrait of a graduate competencies, right? That we're testing and measuring on their subjective, social, and emotional acumen based on the state's definition. And this is the important part, because the state's definition for the social emotional learning competencies are all built around wokeism. It's the empathy is, do you accept people that identify as something other than biological reality? Okay, if you don't accept that, then you get a low empathy score or a low respect score, because you don't want to use somebody's pronouns that don't match their biological sex. So all of these things are geared towards control, to force students or condition students into going along with this new kind of woke ideology that the state is pushing. It's become the new state religion.
And I love it because we had a rep come in to a group of people in Utah County in 2021, and someone said, hey, we want CRT out of our schools. And the rep said, good news, CRT is out of the schools. There is the Utah, we have banned CRT. And so everyone's like, wow, okay, we've done it.
No, it's a false sense of security, right? And that's what they're trying to do is kind of, I think, trick parents. We often say, look, in education, we may be speaking the same words, using the same words, but we're not speaking the same language. And to add to what Natalie said, here they are, and they're assessing, meaning testing and monitoring students, their attitudes, their values, their mindsets, their beliefs, and even their social behaviors based on how well those align with these woke ideologies. So with social, environmental, racial, sexual, economic justice. And that's the problem, obviously. The state's vision for your child is a collectivist vision. It is geared toward compliance, like you mentioned with COVID. In fact, the adaptation or adaptive function of education has been something that's been pointed out by people who long predated our fight. The New York Teacher of the Year, John Taylor Gatto, he wrote books, copious numbers of books, about how destabilizing and demoralizing the education system is to individual motivations, to individual thought, to any sort of independence that you would want to see developed in a child. You want kids to be able to think for themselves, but when the schools define critical thinking as basically deconstruction of anything that is traditional, anything that is normative, and then they sell it to parents as, look, we're teaching them to think for themselves.
How to dismantle the country.
Right.
I want to add something
Yes.
just real quick.
Yeah.
Just to play off what you were saying there with, this social emotional learning, and really the bottom line you said is control. Okay. Well, what do they do with that control? In China, they have apps, right? Where you've got that if you jaywalk, you do something, you've got a red, green, yellow, whatever, that you can, if you're red, you can't go out of your house and you can't shop, you can't do these things. So you have to be good enough on a social level now to complete whatever it is you need to in society. The same thing they're trying to do is here, which is now our legislature just voted on the digital ID. Okay, these things are all being put into place. We're being outplayed. They want control. So eventually it's going to be sitting on your phone, on an app. How good are you? How good is this child? What kind of job can they get? Do they get their stipend of money from the Federal Reserve now, because we've got digital money, right? That's still it's here, but it's now being implemented into different things. And so eventually what's going to happen is if your child doesn't say the right pronouns, doesn't do the right thing, doesn't identify somebody in the bathroom correctly, they're going to get a lesser score. They're going to receive less money. They're going to receive ridicule in public. And that's how they do you. And the other thing I wanted to tie into that was the 15-minute cities. You live in a 15-minute city, guess what? They have ultimate control of what you do, where you go, what you eat. And this, to the listener, this is why it matters. That's why 15-minute cities matter. That's why these board meetings with the schools matter. The legislatures matter. You guys, there is not just one angle. There are multiple angles in a piece of this pie that are all coming together, and eventually all those slices are going to come together and create a whole pie, and it's going to be too late.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, and they only give these kids the education they need to basically fit into the master plan, if that makes sense. And that goes along with the 15-minute cities. These centralized planners, what they really need is a compliant underclass in order to make these plans successful in their eyes. And that's how you do it. When we have droves of illegal immigrants coming into the United States. Harriman High has something like close to 30%.
Over 30% now.
Yeah. Of its student
illegals?
population.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
And it has completely transformed.
Harriman
How
High?
have I not heard about this?
30% of
It was-
Harriman High
yeah.
is illegals?
We
And
need
it
to
was
look into that.
it was actually
Yeah.
in the news, and
Whoa.
it has completely transformed
Where are they
the
living?
culture of the school. And the teachers can't keep up with it because there's too many kids that can't speak English, and so they can't teach them all English. So they're putting them on headsets, and so they can have that personalized learning because they still want these marginalized students to have access to quality education. So everything's going on computers because the computers can adapt to whatever language the student speaks. So you don't have to like I was watching something last night from one of these education entities, U.S. Department of Ed entities, and they're all about not helping students assimilate, but celebrating their different languages. And teachers, instead of teaching all the kids to speak English, are supposed to adjust to all the different languages in their class and write signs in 20 different languages, and so that and help kids use their own language and hope that other kids can figure it out. And these are teachers that don't speak all the languages, but they're asked to read books in all these different languages. So the teachers don't know what they're teaching, but they have to address these students in their own languages.
You're like,
what about English first?
This is Tower of Babel.
Yeah, what about English first law?
Yeah.
There is a law in the United States. It's English first. What about that?
It gets worse.
It's multiculturalism has superseded Americana.
Like what you were saying, you got one law and they get caught on that, they can go to another law to get out of it. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and let's not forget that we're talking about our great reps that passed a law that said that, while Tennessee passed a law that banned the LGBT flag in the classrooms, Utah failed to pass that. So that, I mean, what's going on in this state?
Well,
Our conservatives.
Well,
even on that, I don't know if you could believe the headlines, because the headlines say largely banned. There are always, I think, just little loopholes.
Watch for the squishy language.
Yes, watch for the squishy language. But, back on Harriman High, Natalie mentioned, the kids being on the tech. And this brings in the AI as well, because Jordan School District has totally gone all in and embracing the AI revolution.
Why is that a concern?
Well, because if an algorithm is doing your thinking for you,
or the algorithms have bias programmed into it, like Gemini.
AI can't have bias.
Come on.
The creator of Gemini, they have posts of his. He's rabidly racist. He's a white person, but he is anti-white, and he talks about program. I don't know if you watched the news the last couple of weeks since the advent of this generative Gemini AI program. And I made a post about it. Somebody put in a prompt to show me a beautiful white woman. And the response was no image, but a lecture on why we don't respond to those kind of requests, because we need to focus on the diversity, the beautiful nature of diverse populations, and we don't want to be racist. But then if you put in the prompt, show me a beautiful black woman, pictures come right up and they say, women are undeniably beautiful and blah, 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 and goes on at length at how amazing and beautiful black people are. So it's literally, and if you put in questions about show me a picture of George Washington, it creates like an Asian looking George Washington. Like there are no white people showing up.
Wow.
All of our historical figures come up as different races than what they
history.
were.
And rewriting it through a Marxist lens.
Story.
So AI through the lens of Marxism. Jeez.
And this is Gemini. Who's the creator?
Google.
Krasik, I think is the last name, but
he's
Google.
He's a white racist of his own race. That's interesting.
Well, it's not interesting, because what he's a Marxist. And the whole purpose of Marxism, it is about creating division and putting the people at war with each other.
Right. You have to marginalize the majority population.
You have to marginalize the independent class, the class that does not need a master, the class that can take care of its own, that can feed itself. You have to get rid of them and have a nation of dependents. Right. And that's why open the borders, bring in dependents, get them to help overthrow the stability of the country.
This is an age-old story, too. It's been happening forever.
It is.
And personalized competency-based learning helps facilitate that in a very efficient way, because every student is learning something different depending on their identity group, depending on their race. So think all the kids are on their headsets. They're all being exposed to something different on their computers, meaning the teacher's not teaching anymore. The teachers are reduced to facilitators of tech and cheerleaders and support people, so they can help the kids do a mind break.
So who's behind what's being taught?
Right, it's these people that are programming the ed tech, which
and our state boards
which is the same people that are running corporate America that is turning woke. So then it makes it easy to pit students against each other and make them hate or distrust each other, because they're being taught different things about each other through the tech.
You've been on the school board for several years. There's few people that understand what's going on in the school system here in Utah as well as you do. Do you believe it is safe for parents to have their children in school?
Monica and I created Higher Ground to warn families of these tsunamis, these woke ideologies that they're not just coming, they have hit. They are full on being implemented at every level, and largely coming through the tech. And so, we have a big push right now, at least in the media, and at least lip service from legislators and the governor about the dangers of social media. But nobody is, which is true, the social media is not good for kids, but they're completely ignoring the fact that the kids are all on Chromebooks all day long, every day. That same content that is harmful to them through their phones is coming through the Chromebooks. It's state-sponsored tech, which means that whatever the kids do on the tech, on their Chromebooks, the state owns the data. The state owns the surveillance systems that are built into the computer that makes it computer adaptable in order to personalize the learning or personalize the indoctrination. And all of that data is collected on the student and creates a profile on the student. So student data profiles that score all of their, it's the ESG for kids. It's the environmental social governance score. And they start at the youngest of ages. Kindergartners are going to school and spending most of their time on a laptop. This does not create good human relations. We are going to see more and more, I think, crime in our population because people don't know how to relate to humans anymore.
They're breaking our society down. So, and they have access to pornography on those Chromebooks. I know that.
And the pornographers have access to them.
Exactly.
Well, in a day when data is today's gold.
Yes.
They are mining that data in the minds of your children.
Right. Because if they can
Minority
learn,
Report.
if they can, if the more data they can collect on the kid, the more they can predict the students' attitudes, values, and their behaviors. And if they can predict, they can control.
And as we move into the fourth industrial revolution, which Utah is leading the charge, or supposed to be the birthplace or the cradle of the fourth industrial revolution, and the AI has all that data on your children. And what will they be able to do with that data on your children? This is terrifying. I do not see how. I will tell you this. I do not believe. And I'm sorry. I know the world has done a phenomenal job taking mothers out of the home and making the economy in a way that you need both parents to work. But it's put us in a situation where how can you honestly feel good about or feel safe putting your children in these indoctrination centers? And I don't think you can. I do not think it is responsible.
You can't. My two children, they're both in high school, and my son at about midway through his sophomore year said, I just can't do it anymore. It's like he was coming home from school, I think, like both physically and I think spiritually sick. And my own daughter, I pulled her out because she was being groomed by somebody on her school Chromebook, and there's no way for her to do her work at school absent using a Chromebook. We have a real problem where our kids are being assaulted, and they can't escape from these ideologies, the indoctrination, the efforts to get at them. And, and it's gotten even worse now because Natalie mentioned, the social credit profile. Well, the transcript of the future is well and alive here in Utah, and it's being pushed by a group called Mastery Transcript Consortium. The state board and higher ed institutions are in collaboration with the Mastery Transcript Consortium. And the whole point of that profile, this new profile, is not just numbers and letters giving you an idea of a student's objective academic performance. It's supposed to mine the totality of a student's experiences, even going all the way back into their early childhood, in order to give the state data on what type of person this child is. And that falls into the whole child agenda, where the state is expected to mediate and to provide for all of a child's needs and wants, so the physical, the emotional, the psychological, to the point of, providing food and creating these teen centers for students across the state. We have 200 high schools in the state of Utah. There are 70 teen centers, teen wellness centers, built in conjunction with those high schools. Natalie can tell you a lot of what they provide.
Well, the teen centers are there supposedly for students who are homeless or who their families, they feel disenfranchised from their families, or their families won't affirm them, right? So it provides a place for the student to go where they can have access to laundry facilities and a food pantry and clothes and all of these things. But it's not limited to just homeless students, because that would stigmatize the homeless students. So they make it available to all the students. And I'm hearing reports that a lot of the schools are using these teen centers for students to come in the morning and change their clothes so they can appear as the opposite gender and go to school, and then go back to the teen center and change back before they go home. So it's to help facilitate gender transitions at school in a way that the parent won't be the wiser.
Is it true? And tell me what you see what you've seen in your experience with the school board, that there's a huge movement amongst leaders in the state and in the country that say that the ultimate authority of the child is not the parent, it is the school and the state? Well,
having experience with the United Nations, I would say it's the rights of the child that the globalists are pushing, where the child has more rights than their parents, and the parents are perceived as the oppressor and the child is the oppressed. And so they're trying to liberate, this is the Marxist liberation theology, liberate the child from their family and from their parent, so that the child can act independently and make all of these choices on their own. That's why we have again and again laws that they try to run on consent. Children cannot legally consent, but they're trying to change that. Children, it's the same with the idea of normalizing pedophilia, right? So children, because there are the Mary Calderones and the, what's his name, that started, anyway, part of the sexual revolution.
Foucault. Foucault.
That's not the one I was thinking of, but there are several, kind of the founders of Planned Parenthood and things like that believed that children are sexual from birth, so that adults that want to abuse children can have easier access, and they don't suffer penalties for their behavior when it comes to children and their involvement with children. So again, the system is helping to facilitate the breaking down of what they call barriers. But those barriers are actually protections that have been put in place to keep children safe from exploitation, from evil adults that would want to come at children. Predators, yes, that would want to exploit children for power, profit, pleasure, or any other number of reasons, because children are vulnerable, and we have traditionally had all kinds of things in place to protect children. And the system is all about breaking down barriers, overcoming barriers, so that children can have, they say, access to a quality education, but really it's so that the system has access to children. And predators and others that want to exploit children have easy access to these children.
Jason, you asked earlier, is it safe to have your children there? And you guys have given your points. And I in my family, this is what I say, and we're almost done too. My last one is in high school next year, and then I've got one that's out this year, and we're done.
Then you're going to have grandchildren coming, though.
I know. Oh, I know, and I'm concerned for that. I'm actually not as concerned for my children, only because they're taught very well in their home. And what I say is this, and if every one of these children that was strong pulled out, what would that do for the weak? And so what I say is, yes, it's not a good place, but we also need strong kids within the system to help those that cannot. because they're not going out. Their parents aren't pulling them out. The kids aren't going to know the difference. And they need other kids within to say, hey, what that teacher said, what that other kid said, that's wrong.
Okay.
And here's why. And that's, so for me, that's why I'm keeping my children in, so they can help others.
That speaks to you.
That's just me, though.
That speaks
That's just
to
me.
how strong your children are because you have taught them well, because you are strong. But most parents aren't even aware enough to be able to then also prepare their child. And when you see the masses of adults falling for these ideologies and falling in lockstep, they can't
It's clear
themselves stand up to the peer pressure of their adult peers and the expectations within the corporate world and their jobs and their bosses. And everywhere you look, the adults are falling by the wayside. And we expect children to be able to push back against a machine.
They won't.
No.
Which is why I'm saying,
Which is why we're losing almost all our kids.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying for these parents that are tough, you got to have someone. Because
do.
otherwise the whole thing is done.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. What will save the system is people pulling out of the system. Do you want to? I want to bring in a piece of good news. One of the great things of COVID, it led to a huge surge of homeschooling, of people pulling their kids out of the system. And I'll tell you what is exciting to me. We have an army of kids that have been pulled out of the system, and some of these kids that have stayed in the system, because there are some of these but to stay in the system now, you look at some of these kids that are coming out of college, and this should give hope to our listeners. We have some of the most incredible leaders coming out of these schools. Why? Because now the only way to get out of, when we were all young, to get out of college and to be conservative, you didn't mean anything, because you just were because everybody else was. But these kids now who are coming out of the colleges as conservatives, they have fought and fought and fought, and they know exactly saying they know where they stand, and they understand the principles of liberty, and they are coming out like lions on fire for freedom. You look at Charlie Kirk. You look at some of these young Riley Gaines. We have some. God works amazing.
This is
and as dark as all this stuff is, the good news for our listeners is this. God is working through this darkness, and he is bringing out some of these leaders, some incredible leaders of light, and he is building his army through this. And I am excited about some of these young people, because some of these young people that are getting through it, whether it's the kids that are homeschooled and are learning not to think like sheep, or the few that have broken through the system without being captured by it, those kids are going to change the freaking world. And God doesn't need a lot of those. Right. God does not need a lot of those to take this beast system down, and he's going to take it down. Right. Yeah. That's the good news. He's going to take it down. It's
going to self-destruct.
I like
it's
that.
who will be left standing. And what you said is, that's the silver lining, right? There's always a silver lining. That's what happens when you look to God, is you find the silver lining, and you can focus on that and hone in on that and hold on to it to pull through the darkness.
Yeah. The more you limit, I think, a child's exposure to, and it's not just limiting their exposure to these types of environments, but replacing, those environments with meaningful and really purposeful things that that used to occupy kids' time, but now doesn't. I mean, kids used to read. Now they are functionally illiterate. The schools even say, here, you're in 11th grade. The only way we can get you to read is by giving you a pornographic graphic novel, basically. And we kind of need a resurgence, kind of a revival of this extolling just, I think, better books, the best books, being with people in person. They're human interactions, just kind of like on a normal basis.
That's definitely fringe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say that. Well, I think we probably should start wrapping up.
Yeah.
I want to hear both your final thoughts, and then obviously Tom. So let's start with you, Natalie.
Sure. Well, I think just on this last topic, we have a great opportunity, because everything is so black and white. There's never been such a great contrast when you look at what's happening, the darkness that is enveloping, but then you contrast that to the light, the good and the beautiful, the upright. the inspiring, and it creates a clear choice. We have a clear choice. It's just up to us to recognize the choice and to have the courage and the faith to choose wisely, and to take the arrows that come with choosing good. And if you do that, you'll also get all the blessings that come from it also. And we will see miracles. We are at a point where it's going to take divine providence once again to save us from this. And that only happens if we have faith, right? So we have to look to him. We have to trust. We have to believe that he's going to help us through the messiness. And if we do what's right, things may get worse before they get better. But ultimately, that's the only path towards restoring what has gone wrong. And so we have to be willing to face the storm and charge straight into it so we can get through it and get through it faster. That's what buffaloes do when they see a blizzard coming, right? They charge the storm. They don't run away or hide, or they just go straight at it. And that's the quickest way to get through it. And I think that's kind of exciting. Like, we live in exciting times. And will people come at you? Sure. But if you know who you are and you know who God is, you don't have anything to fear. You can just move forward and trust that if you stick with right, you will come out on top every single time, no matter if all hell combines against you to take you down. So my hope would be, I'm running for re-election. I announced the day they wanted me to put in my resignation, and I say, heck no, I am moving forward. The people elected me to do a job, and I have done my darndest to keep my campaign promises, which is to bring light and truth, and educate parents about what's really happening. They deserve to know. People can't make good decisions if they don't have good information. And the system is expert at keeping parents in the dark, and so that they don't know what's going on. And I believe in the people of Utah. If they have good information, that good things will come.
I love it.
That's good. Well, all this talk about systems, and one thing I've written is that, when you allow a system to define the confines of your existence, that system wins when you internalize its imprisonment. That means you have to own your mind at all costs. This is a battle and a war being fought and waged over the minds of children. And our children need to be able to know that, they have the freedom, and they should be acting on their consciences. Parents should be doing the same. Will you pay a price for standing up for what's right? Absolutely. But the more of us that do, the easier it gets to be able to, I think, be instinctive and to be natural and to simply, fight for what is right. And I really, I appreciate you guys so much. You're like on top of all these issues, and you keep shouting it from the rooftops. And what Natalie has been doing is she's sacrificed so much in order to get this message out. And as a parent, I am grateful, because it is her willingness to speak out and to kind of stand alone and be a target that inspired me to get into this fight. I'm also running for state board. I believe that the corruption at the state board, where it exists, needs to be rooted out. And it can only be done if we are free to speak about it and free to point out where things must change. And we need a course correction pretty seriously. And I do believe this is a message that resonates with normal people who just want normalcy. And we're not even talking, something that's like excellent. We're just talking normalcy. Can we at least get back to that baseline? If we can, then I believe there's hope. And I think people need to hunger and desire for that normalcy again.
I love it. Thank you, Monica.
Wow. Thank you, both of you. Powerful. Normalcy is just common sense, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And that's what works. Common sense works in all things. And if we just understand that, we follow our heart, common sense works. We don't need to have the government tell us what to do, especially our children. Of all the podcasts I've done, this is one of the most important I've been on. And I'm passionate about it because I've got 4 children, and I've got grandchildren coming soon. And but because they are controlling the children of this nation, the world, but this nation, and especially in my home state of Utah, that's important, you guys. And what they're going to do to our kids, I mean, I can't imagine where they're going to be at my age and the children that they're going to raise. What's our country going to look like in 20 years, in 40 years from now? If these kids have these indoctrination centers that are continually beating on them, different things about who they should be, what the outcome should be. It's not free choice. It's not a free will, guys. This is that age old story that's been told since the dawn of time. The reason this country was founded was because they didn't have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, Second Amendment. Well, you can go down the line. They left because of an oppressive king that says you have to be part of this religion. My ancestors did the same thing. They left a king and they came over here to have land, to be left alone, to be educated the way that they wanted to do it. And that's what's happening right now. And if the parents, like you said earlier, would actually stand up, this would be over. The parents can't stand up. So how do you think the kids are going to stand up? These kids are being pummeled at all angles. And Jason brought up a good point about COVID. Thank goodness for COVID, because if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have these leaders, at least as strong as they are. And these kids, some of them, and I know some of them are mine, I know some of them are yours and yours. These kids are now standing up for freedom, and it is actually incredible to watch what they've gone through. So I say God bless the children, and may the parents wake up.
Amen.
Natalie, I have the deepest respect for you, and I've told you that many times, and I mean it. And
back at you.
We have incredible people in this state, and this state matters. And I'm just to you guys, because you guys are the power. I mean, you guys are the power to change things. I mean, we have some incredible people here, but we need an army. We need more people in the fight. We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. I mean, these guys are handing it to us, and these people have been, these guys, been fighting the Capitol and fighting. I mean, I know how much they sacrifice, and the fact of the matter is, we need help. We need a freaking army, and there's so many of you out there that care about freedom, that care about the Constitution, that care about America, that care about your children, and you watch Fox and you love Tucker. And you say, I want to do. You're needed now. Natalie needs you now. Monica needs you. Your children need you now. And the fight is not in D.C. It is in your backyard. Your state has been captured. But you have been sent to make a difference. You've been sent to fight this fight. I'm going to read this quote. In all ages, this is by Ezra Taft Benson. In all ages, prophets have looked down through the corridors of time to our day, to right now, when everything is happening at the border, that America is on the verge of collapsing. Billions of the deceased and those yet to be born have their eyes on you. Make no mistake about it, you are a marked generation. For nearly 6,000 years, God has held you in reserve to make your appearance in the final days before the second coming of the Lord. Some individuals will fall away, but the kingdom of God will remain intact to welcome the return of its head, even Jesus Christ. While this generation will be compared in wickedness to the days of Noah, when the Lord cleansed the earth by flood, there is a major difference this time. God has saved for the final inning some of his strongest children who will help bear off the kingdom triumphant. And that's you. And that's the only reason we do this show. The only reason we do this show and do our social media is for one reason, is to build that army, because God's going to win. And our message is simply, if you have a role, and if your heart, the fire of freedom burns in your heart when you listen to these people, when you hear what's going on, it's because your spirit has been waiting for 6,000 years for this moment. And I'm telling you, the moment is now. I mean, it is not... The fight is the war. We are in the war. I mean, they're going after people, and we are just. I'm just telling you, this is the moment you're waiting for. The fight is now, and you are needed. And all you have to do, Look up Utah Freedom Coalition. Look up Defending Utah. There are so many different great organizations. Start your own organization. Mom Army. There's so many Utah Patriots. There are so many organizations that are out there that need your help. And I will tell you, if we can get enough people to stand up and fight with us, Cox, Curtis, all these corrupt people who are running away with our state, they will shake in their boots when they see that army grow. Because guess what? We're going to win. We will win. The only question is, will you stand up and play your role in that army? And I know a lot of you are, and I know you will. And I just pray that, and I don't pray because it's going to happen. God's in control. This is his fight, and he wins. And what a time to be alive. So thank you guys. Tom, you're great. You are a great general. And God bless you guys. It's a great time to be alive. God bless America, and God bless Utah.